2, 1.
What's going on, everyone? We're back. It's another A&M football season. The whole Eagle crew is here. We're here at late night at Kyle Field. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. Over here is Robert Cessna next to me at another undisclosed location in Kyle Field, or maybe just the room next to us. That's Alex Miller of the Eagle. A&M wins a 41-10 against Kent State tonight. Hayden's King's first performance, first time for the Aggie faithful get to see him. First time to get to see the offensive line, and first time for A&M to go into a season with the same kind of expectations. Cease, what was your take on the game? Did they meet the expectations that both were placed on Haynes King, the offensive line, and then just the team as a whole from what they finished off with last season?
Final answer is yes, but it was a definitely big no through the first half. Second half, I know we'll get into great detail about it. I was amazed at their progress during a game only because they started so poorly. At halftime, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this team, but to cut to your chase, Haynes King, I'm just looking forward to covering this guy, see what he can do, because I just think he brings a whole new element to this team. And so I think a lot of team fans came in here with great expectations. I think they walked out maybe with greater expectations.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the offensive line. There, other than 2 holding penalties, I believe, you really didn't hear anything about the offensive line. There really wasn't a whole lot of ridiculous pressure, at least pressure that Haynes King couldn't work out of. And with the offensive line, if you're not hearing about them, they're doing their job. I would give them, I don't know what they gave them for their grade. I'd give them a solid B+, if not an A-. The A- might have been if there was the 2 holding calls. But for an offensive line that replaced 4 starters, I thought they did a really good job. Haynes King had a little bit of an up and down night, but he's much more of a true kind of gunslinger than A&M has had in a long time. And so for every electric play, every crazy scramble and pass he works on the run, he's probably going to throw a pick or 2, at least to start out with. He had 3 tonight. So there is a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of reward with him. And I think that's going to necessarily maybe bode well for the Aggies moving forward. Alex, what's your quick takes on the game?
Yeah, definitely a much better second half from the Aggies. It kind of looked like they were sleepwalking until, Leon O'Neal woke them up with that pick 6, as his tagline goes. Yeah, I thought Haynes King looked pretty good, looked pretty natural back in the pocket, but definitely made some risky throws. The 3 interceptions, that's obviously a big blemish. But, Jimbo Fisher said it after the game. Haynes King continued to go back out there. It didn't really affect his mentality of how he was playing back there. And we saw with the legs, that's something that we've been hearing about over and over. We saw a couple of flashes of that when Haynes got in at the end of a couple of games last year. But now that he's the starter, we saw him run all the way around the field. We saw him run that speed option. And the legs really definitely are a true weapon. And, on defense, A&M, you don't want to give up over 200 rushing yards probably. Leon O'Neal said that's kind of unacceptable for them. But, at the end of the game, Cease and I were talking about it after the game. Kent State could have had 24 points. The game looks a lot different if it's 41-24 rather than 41-10. And the A&M defense held strong even with a bunch of backups in.
Yeah, Haynes King started off 6 for 6 for 46 yards in that first drive that led to a touchdown, an Anaya Smith touchdown catch. After that, him and Anaya dropped probably maybe one of the best passes he had of the game, and things were a little bit shaky there. He threw the next one as incomplete. They ended up having to kick a field goal, and things just kind of sputtered. I will give them the benefit of the doubt, too, on offense that because – and you can tell me if I'm crazy on this – but because Kent State is an up-tempo offense. They led the nation in scoring offense last year, even though it was an all-MAC schedule. They have a potent offense. Jimbo Fisher was playing his normal ball possession game. He was going to play some defense with the offense and keep Kent State's offense off the field. That's kind of why I felt like that second quarter was a little bit of a slog. They mounted some really long drives in that quarter. Now, They left points on the board with 2 interceptions, but had those 2 interceptions turn into points, it would have made a little bit more sense of kind of what was going on through that slog the second quarter.
I thought if Caleb Chapman gets a 52-yard touchdown pass when he probably was interfered with, if Haynes King just leads that a little bit, I felt that play could have been the spark a la O'Neal in the first half. Then I think the offense would have even scored more points, but I think they just were in that lull, as you mentioned, and nothing was going to get them out of it, or did get them out of them. But I think Chapman, if they catch that ball and he was open and Kings just missed him, because, you know, it's amazing what one play will do. But now A&M has the capabilities of making that one play all the time. When you got King back there, they're just one play away from kicking the extra point. And then you put a Chaney speed in there, and then along with Spiller, and I know they're only playing, Kent State, but suddenly the weapons they have.
Wow. Right.
Wow.
What we're talking about, of course, in the third quarter, Leon O'Neal actually is sitting on the sideline thinking his night might be done because of what they called was a targeting penalty. They gets reviewed, comes back that it actually wasn't targeting. He led with his shoulder into the chest of the guy, and it really wasn't even a late hit call because he hit the guy inbounds, but he got a late hit flag on that as well. 2 plays later, he comes back, is cutting inside on a blitz, and the pass happens to come right at him, catches it and goes 85 yards behind what he calls the big trunk of DeMarvin Leal and the convoy that was leading his way into the end zone. That touchdown put points that A&M's offense couldn't find on the board, and after that, the offense started clicking, started finding momentum. I think after that, Haynes King was at like 8 for 10 with 1 interception and 1 incomplete pass, but also a touchdown pass to Anaya Smith, throwing in a chain touchdown. He had 2 on the night in that mix there. You're right. Like a lot of things didn't really go well, but you have, as an A&M fan, you have to be excited about all of the weapons and the versatility that they had on offense that frankly just wasn't there last year.
Without a doubt, you hit on it. There was 2 stretches there. Smith has a great drop on a great pass over the middle. I think at that point he's 6-6. He drops it. Then he has a lull. He's on another roll. And then, a drop comes up, the interception, but he can do that. Haynes King can do that. I leave here the number one thing there's a lot of things I take, but maybe the number one is coming in the back of my mind. I said to myself, if A&M gets the college football playoff, can they outscore Alabama? Can they outscore Oklahoma? I didn't think they could possibly, because I didn't think Jimbo that was his DNA, and everybody told me Cessna. He let Jameis Winston throw it all around on their national championship year. And once again, I think he does cater his team, those personnel. They took a lot more chances today than they did ever under Mond, I feel. They let it play. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be a fun team to watch. And I like Jimbo's reaction in the postgame. They threw 4 interceptions. But when you gamble, that's going to happen to you. You can't gamble. You can't win $1,000 playing $10 a hand.
Well, and how important is Caleb Chapman? He proved it in the Florida game last year. That's about the only time they aired it out in the whole game last year. They just didn't have that deep vertical threat of a guy who can not only get past it, but go up and get the ball. And he proved his worth on that 53-yard catch there up the middle. On what was going there through the middle. Cease, let's go through first some of your grades. What you'll have to pick up tomorrow's Eagle to see all of them, but hit the high points of some of your grades tonight.
I guess a lot of B's, because when it's all said and done, I didn't like the defense giving up 200 yards, but they had a lot of third down stops. They had the 2 big turnovers, because even the turnover near the end of the first half, I think there was a miss route on Kent State, but they're going to score points. It's going to be 10-6, maybe 10-10. I thought that was a big interception. So I thought the defense made the plays they had to. 5 sacks as well. Sacks played into not adding bonus points. I like the offense. I almost said 600 yards, but 5 turnovers. But a lot of B's, but a lot of work to do. But man, so much better. And Alex and I talked. It was hard not to think of Vanderbilt that first half. Mm-hmm. But by the second half, we're talking Alabama again. I mean, they start doing things, and you start seeing players So everything worked. Smith makes a mistake. They made in the kicking game. They made mistakes in just about everything. But I like the fact they made mistakes, taking chances. You take chances in today's football. You got to take chances, and they're only going to get better.
A couple of interesting points on the defense. Jimbo Fisher said a lot of the reason why they gave up a lot of those rushing yards is that the defensive ends were getting too far upfield and weren't crashing down into the pocket and into the play. He also said it's interesting because, and they did this at times last year, especially on third downs where they send one of the linebackers out, go into like a full dime, in essence, a 4-1-6 defense, and have a lot of defensive backs out there. That was basically their base defense tonight. They started with Edrin Cooper out there as the only linebacker. Him and Anthony Hines played a little bit together. Not Anthony Hines. Aaron Hansford played. I'm pulling a U. Played both of them in the middle for a little spell, and then Andre White came in, and it was a little bit of a rotation. But they played with just one spy, and so if the running back draws that one linebacker out of the middle of the field or someone in the backfield, that whole middle of the field was wide open. And that was, while I'm sure there was busted coverages and schemes and assignments, that was a little bit of the scheme. They were going to try to match. They played a lot of man-to-man against an offense that likes to throw the ball around a lot and play quickly with just one linebacker. And so if the middle's not clogged up, you're going to give up some running yards.
I give Kent State a lot of credit. I like a lot of their schemes. They did many wheels. They did a lot of quick hitters out in the flat. But of course they had a smart quarterback. And when you have a smart quarterback, you can do a lot of that. And on the flip side, once again, you can tell Haynes King a little bit as a coach's son. He's only going to get better. I just think him and Jimbo are going to have such great chemistry moving forward. This is this guy's first game. He had a bad bounce on his interception, but my gosh, he looks so comfortable back there in the pocket. Sometimes maybe too comfortable. He should have thrown some of those balls away. But once again, is when you watch that second half and you leave here, I'm 68, but I think old Leon woke me up.
Yeah, there's three things that stood out to me from the press conference. You had first, Jimbo Fisher was not very happy with the referee and the officiating. He made it known. He said it was pretty, just like their play, the officiating might have been a little shabby on the first game as well. Number two, you had Leon O'Neal is just great talking to him. He's just full of personality. And he said he was great. It was great seeing Leon O'Neal in front of him in that convoy. And he calls him a big trunk. And when he saw that big trunk in front of him, he just followed it all the way into the end zone. And that was something he really enjoyed. And then the third thing is Anaya Smith, who had 100 receiving yards on, I believe, 8 catches and 2 touchdowns, said he didn't really feel like he had a great game. And
some drops.
And he did have some drops. He had a drop, and then one of those long catches there in the second, he almost dropped. He bobbled it. And then he had the muffed punt there at the end that could have set up one of 2 bad beat cover buster field goals. Alex, me and you were both in the press conference after the game. What stood out to you about the press conference?
Yeah, Anaya Smith was definitely down on himself. Definitely not his best game. As he described it, he played like butt.
Big trunk.
Yeah, if playing like butt for Anaya Smith is 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, what's to say what he can do if he's playing at 100%? He made some really good plays. We saw him in that 2-back set a couple times running the ball. He's their Swiss Army knife. Leon O'Neal, though, I mean, the whole comment about DeMarvin Leal, I mean, that was just hilarious. Calling him Medea, number 8 with the trunk. You just see the passion that Leon has, in growing, and Jimbo talking about him, of these guys that have stuck around, they grow up a little. It's been nice getting to talk to Leon this week and kind of hearing from him finally. A guy that stood out to me tonight on the defensive side was Shamar Turner at defensive tackle. He didn't get the start, but he was one of the guys who was first man off the bench, true freshman, just came in this summer. He was one of the top tacklers, had a sack and a half, very disruptive up in the middle. A&M playing without McKinley Jackson and Michael Clemens. Sorry to drop that one in there all randomly. We were kind of suspecting that they weren't going to play, but for a guy like Shamar Turner getting a chance to play, he really proved himself. And then on the other side, Bryce Foster starting at center, true freshman. He had his moments where he got beat, but I feel like for the most part, he played pretty decent.
I don't think anybody's gonna be laughing at Bryce Foster riding his little scooter anymore after that performance tonight. Fahil Diggs, defensive end, had a lot of playing time, did some pretty good stuff over there. A couple of housekeeping things, as Alex said, McKinley Jackson and Michael Clemens didn't play. They've been suspended from some legal issues that they got into. Miles Jones was also absent, cornerback. We'll need to follow up on what his situation. And Caden Davis, the kickoff specialist, who he's also a guy that we thought maybe we'd see called upon in some long field goals. He was out. And the kicker, Bond.
Yes.
Randy Bond stepped in and came and did some kicking, which Jimbo was really pleased of there.
Marvin Leal played a good game. Mm-hmm. I mean, he got one of his tackles for losses taken away by a penalty, but he was very disruptive. And as a lot of people say that watch A&M, he comes close to making plays. He makes quarterbacks throw the ball quicker. He did that tonight a couple of times. He doesn't get a lot of credit because people are so conscious of where he's at.
One point on the Miles Jones being out too. Brian George started in place of him, and Kent State went after that side of the ball on offense, really picking on him. Jalen Jones, he's a pretty solid lockdown guy for the Aggies. They didn't really go after him, and it was interesting because the freshman Tyreek Chappelle, he got in a little bit of the rotation for George there in the middle of the game. And it was a little bit of the same story. There were a couple of times he got beat there on a slant route, I noticed. So A&M definitely missing Miles Jones, who he had a pretty solid year last year and, decided to come back for that super senior season. So if there was one kind of weak spot in the defense, I felt like it was that one corner spot. And A&M really is going to want Miles Jones back, given his experience and his improved play over the last year.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's getting late. We need to wrap this up. Cease, we'll close out with you. What is one question left on this A&M team that you want to see answered in the weeks to come?
Well, I just think, once again, he touched on a little bit depth. You always worry about depth, and suddenly they were able to overcome at center. You mentioned Miles Jones wasn't in. Everybody loves talking about how great Michael Clemens is, but he only played like 5 games again last year. You're only going to win if you have that quality depth because guys aren't going to be out there. And tonight, A&M had some guys step up. You want some other guys to step up bigger, but A&M's going to need all that depth and more if they want to make the college football playoff. For sure. Well, everyone, thanks so much for watching. We'll have all of our recaps, this video, everything else on the eagle.com and Aggie Sports. Eagle.com/Aggie Sports or myaggienation.com. Check Twitter, check Facebook. Everything will be up there. We'll be back starting Monday through all next week to preview Colorado. Thanks, everyone.